I think we should get into the meat and bones of this big update, which is all about the dev team, their responsibilities, and them talking about what the hell's going on for Final Fantasy VII in terms of finishing up part 1 and actually moving on to part 2. So let's just go over all of it. Remake arrives in March 2020 ahead of the launch. Members of the dev team have shared their unique personal thoughts and insights about both this and the original game, and bringing the reimagining iconic RPG to life. Kitase was said, in the years following 2009, it was a running joke all over the world. Promoting Final Fantasy XIII series, I had an opportunity to speak for many fans and journalists. The question that I always got was, as we got up to the part ways, was, when are you making Final Fantasy VII Remake? It was to the point where it almost felt like an alternative way to say goodbye, so eventually I started preemptively giving my response to the question before they'd even ask it. If we were to create a remake of that now, it would be an enormous amount of data, and who knows how many years it would take. But if the right time comes along, we just might do it someday. This is, I think, where the original quote from Square was about towns, where HD towns are so expensive, we can't do HD towns. It was more of like him sort of saying that'd be like the last thing we would do is that. This is how I'd respond back then, but who knows, many hundreds of times. To all the people I had a chance to meet back then, the right time has arrived. For the remake, developers who worked on the original have come on board once again. Core members, producers, yada yada, we'll talk about them. Additionally, we also have people like Naoki Hamaguchi, who are now part of the core development team, who was just a fan of Final Fantasy VII back then. And to his delight, creators from younger generations all over the world have come forth hearing the news of the production, while ensuring that the spirit of the original game is kept intact. These members are adding to it the power of a new generation, the PlayStation 5. As a result, the game that is about to be born surpasses even my own expectations, as the one who voiced the desire to take this endeavor on in the first place. In fact, the one who's looking forward to playing this game the most right now might actually be me. The funny thing is that a lot of what you keep hearing from the devs in regards to this game is sort of everyone echoing how big it is. Like, everyone keeps echoing the damn game is huge. Like, the amount of stuff you can do in the game is just so much bigger than the previous games. And it's almost like, it almost feels like they might be hyping it up too much. But if that does end up being the case, I'm going to be super, super happy with it. So from Nomura, you almost forgot that this guy's actually working on this game. You'd like never hear, you never hear from him. He says he started 7 Remake project around the time around the compilation of FF7. We'd gone through Advent Children before Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus, and I was planning this by myself for about a year as the 5th and final entry in the compilation. I don't think that's true one bit. I'm not buying that shit one bit. But it's cute. It's nice. It's nice to think that, yeah, like the end of Crisis Core might have, just segued its way right into FF7 Remake. That's a wonderful thought, but I don't believe it. It sounds great though. It sounds really good. He says, since that initial plan and my first ideas, the other projects took shape and I became very busy as they moved forward, but I never stopped thinking about 7. As such, I feel like I'm looking forward to the release as much as anyone, and I've been carrying around these ideas for a long time. Opportunities for discussing our true intentions are few, but with regard to the size of the game that many are asking about, there's no reason to worry. Even in this Midgar portion alone, the density, the volume is so great that I have to give directions to lighten them. This is the part where it's like they keep talking about how fucking huge the game is, and that's what they're saying is good. But it's like the one thing that they keep hyping up. But I also like respond to myself with the reason they're saying that is that everyone's like, why is it just part 1? Like that's what the biggest criticism for FF7 Remake is. Why is it just part 1? Why aren't you doing the whole thing in one game? And they keep having to respond to the fact that we're adding a lot to this. Like, this is not just going to be like a 6-hour adventure. Like, this is going to be a big, crazy thing. I mean, even, right, the original FF7 could be speedrun in like 6 hours. But first playthrough, it's like 40 plus hours. I personally feel that if you were to run through, just personally, on a very, my own interpretations of what they've shown, I think FF7 Remake's first playthrough, if you don't do all the extra shit, is probably going to be 25 to 30 hours. I think that's what it's going to clock in at approximately. But I think they're going to stick a whole bunch more shit in there, where even if you have a ton of extra stuff. It's probably going to be a 50+ hour game. Like if you actually go for everything. And that's still probably playing it pretty fast. 25 to 30 is too small? I don't know, man. That's still a pretty long game in my opinion. I'm not trying to get too crazy. Like, number one, do I want FF7 to be a 50-hour game? I don't think you're gonna be able to create a 50-hour game and have all 50 hours be good. I don't know, man. That's like asking for a lot. That's asking for a lot. I'd almost prefer a 25 to 30-hour experience that is really good instead of like a 50-hour experience that feels way too padded out. Like woof. But we'll see. I don't know. That's just me personally. Witcher did it. I'm sure all of The Witcher was absolutely amazing. I'm sure every single heartbeat moment and funky combat element of The Witcher was absolutely incredible. But for me, I would much prefer on the quality that they've shown so far, like a 25 to 30 hour game that represents that quality through and through. That gives you variety, different things you can do. You can play darts. You can do squats. You can do all this other shit. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the boat that I think it's going to be a very big game. It's still going to be very large. But I think first playthrough is going to clock in, like, for most people, around 30 hours. Which that's a huge fucking game, man. That's a huge, yeah, I mean 25, 30 for just part one. I'm actually just talking about the Midgar portion, personally speaking. So, we'll see. I would of course love the game to be 50 hours and to represent the quality of everything for 50 hours. Holy shit, that would be incredible. But I just don't think that's, I don't know. You can, but I just don't see it happening. Opportunities for discussing our true intentions are few. Midgar portion alone that was the one we read before. With regards to new characters, of whom I said during past interviews, there would be none. Though they aren't main characters, their number ended up growing considerably in the process of creating a rich depiction of Midgar. When you think of Midgar's final boss, you probably think of Motor, who's like the big goofy motorball head thing at the edge of the freeway. But in this game, new bosses will appear and add excitement to the story even more. This is echoing a bit of what I said, no shit, 4 years ago when they announced FF7. I'm like, you're not gonna fight this stupid, weird, like, rolling roller dude at the end of the bridge. You're not gonna do that at the end of a game. Like, that's gonna be the end of the game. But he's even acknowledging what the final boss is gonna be. Did you hear that? Midgar's final boss, you're thinking of that big motor dude. You're probably gonna run into the motor dude at some point in the game, but that's not gonna be the conclusion, you know? The game isn't just gonna end there. There's gonna be a proper beginning, a middle, and end. There's going to be a story they're gonna tell, and it's going to conclude, most likely, with at least a bit of service to the fans of the previous game. Ghost Sephiroth? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Sephiroth's obviously included way more, which makes sense because you know who Sephiroth is. It's not 1997 anymore. Yeah, it should be a Sephiroth the size of a weapon. Yeah, it should be a 90-foot tall diamond Sephiroth. Either way, I don't even want to consider what they're going to put in there, whether it's going to be a fight with Sephiroth, whether or not what it is. I don't even want to predict about that because I want to be surprised. I don't want to be just like predicting, like watching a trailer and then specifically going, oh, this means that means that means that. Oh, well, it means that guy's the last boss and Cloud dies early. Shit, sorry to spoil you guys. Like, I don't want to go into crazy analysis because I want to be surprised. Like, I want to go in and not have to think ahead so far that I'm literally going to be spoiling myself, because you will absolutely do that. Every single trailer has spoilers of some kind. I almost don't want to look into things too much, which is why I think they are being very cautious with what they're showing in the trailers, because you can kind of get a good idea of where things are going. They already began work on the next one, FF7 Remake Part 2. But they're confident that playing through this title will expand your expectations, just like the world that extends beyond Midgar. Until next time. He's confident that playing through Remake Part 1, the Midgar game, will expand your expectations. He wants us to expect even more. after the first game. That almost sounds like good news. Like, instead of keep your expectations in check, it's more like we got a lot more shit. We got a lot more shit in our pants. We got to go change. So that's kind of good. That's a quote that you could ultimately be throwing yourself under the bus over. You could be seriously damaging what could happen with the next game by throwing out quotes like that. But they're doing it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much this game will expand our expectations for a game after Midgar. I want it to be like Back to the Future 2, man. I want there to be like a short trailer of all the shit that they have planned for the next game. Like a very short trailer or something. Some tiny little teaser or something at the end of the game. Nojima, who I think also did scenario on the original game. I think Nojima was like one of the original devs. He says, it may have been very early in the beginning stages of 7 Remake that I got to see the remake version of Cloud for the first time. It wasn't post-Advent Children Cloud with kindness brimming from within. Rather, there was a young man with fiery features looking straight at me through the screen with aggression in his eyes. I knew right here, oh, this is it. This time, it was the Cloud that I needed to depict. When Cloud came to Midgar, he was hired by Avalanche. This was the sort of look that he would have on his face, so I revisited the experience that he had in his life so far, thinking of the effect that each individual would have had on him, his attitude toward his childhood friend Tifa, how he would act towards Barrett, what sort of distance would he keep when interacting with passerbys on the street. I picture the scene of Midgar in my mind, imagining Cloud moving through it. Write new lines of dialogue. This is how Cloud in the remake version came to be, which is good. That's a good quote. Seems like they get it. Seems like they understand. Cloud starts off as a fiery asshole. And then by the time they leave Midgar, he's kind of different. They sort of start growing as characters. It was an exciting task to introduce a new current of wind to FF7, but at the same time, there was some fear. The original game used to look cartoon-like, stylized, and the story was completed by players using their imagination to supplement porches that couldn't be depicted as a result. Even if they were seeing the same scene, the information they took away from it and how they interpreted it might be different depending on the viewer. Perhaps it's what might be considered a narrative from a storytelling nowadays. Absolutely true. You definitely had to use your imagination on the fucking PlayStation 1. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, there will be much less room for player imagination. It's a good thing this isn't a fighting game. Or else that quote would be, I feel like some fighting game devs, when they're making their fighting game, should just do that. In the latest version of our fighting game, we want there to be less room for player imagination. Sorry, that was a quick tangent. He says, this fact will probably change the feel of the story considerably, but people who know the original might not know quite well how to take it. Such is the fear that I have. But I also have conviction. It should be possible to feel a much deeper connection to Cloud as you join alongside him. It would be amazing if you could feel that fiery flame together with him. Yeah, and the good thing is that, right, once again, that's a quote that you're throwing yourself under the bus, right? Yeah, there's shit in the pants, you have to do something about it. To directly tell your audience, there's going to be a lot less room for imagination in this version of FF7. Because the old game is based on old hardware, old graphics, old storytelling. And what they were capable of doing was at the beginning of a console generation that was hard to program for, which was the PlayStation 1. So that's another one, that's another quote that is like, yee. But then he follows it up where he's like, but we're aware of that. Like, we know that we're not going to be able to fulfill the imaginations of people that grew up with them thinking that this is just the greatest shit ever. And they are completely self-aware of that situation. So, to me, I like appreciate this. This is the same sort of, like he said, conviction that the devs kind of had when I was at E3, when they were talking about things and when they were discussing how they were implementing stuff, when they were going through the demo that still you guys haven't even seen. And I was listening to the dialogue of the characters, which you guys still haven't even seen, which is really unfortunate. There were moments where I was like, I'm going to see this. They're hyping it up, but I'm like, I'm going to remain critical about this thing and I'm going to pay attention. And I was excited, but at the end of it, I was thoroughly impressed. Like, And especially with the dialogue of the characters, it really felt like the characters were them. Like the way they were talking to each other made sense. The things they were saying made sense. Characters didn't feel like, and I'll say it happens in the trailers. Some of the stuff that's actually in the trailers of FF7 Remake does sound like a little anime robot-y in some situations. They sound like a little, they don't sound amazing, but I feel like that's a trailer thing, the way things are cut up and the characters are talking to each other. It definitely didn't sound like that in the version of the game that I saw. So that sort of harkens back to this quote, you know? That sort of harkens back to what they're talking about now, that they know that they're going to expand on a lot of this stuff, but they're aware of that. They're aware that players are going to have exceeding expectations. They're aware that people have created the stories in their heads. They have to come up with something new, but also something that feels old at the same time, and that's fucking hard. And it was at least my impression that they're working their ass off on that. And this quote makes me feel the same way. So, the co-director, when the original FF7 was released, I was another student who dreamed of being in the gaming industry. Of course I played the game, but I also reread the guidebook over and over again. My heart stolen by the engaging universe. I remember wishing strongly that I'd been able to create a game like it someday. 22 years later, the student who dreamed of 7 is now involved in the developing of the remake. I can't help but feel like it's fate. In this title, I handled overseeing the development team overall, such as deciding development milestones, constructing a workflow using Unreal, and taking responsibility for game design. Holy shit. Usually a producer does some of that stuff. Weird. Here I met staff members who were involved in the original game who entered the industry with childhood dreams of 7 just like me, and those who were drawn by the allure of 7 and joined the dev team from overseas. It was a gathering of amazing creators with passion and ambition towards the game. All I have is gratitude for having the opportunity to meet this team. With all that in mind, I've considered the following phrase important. Respect for the original. FF7 Remake takes on the challenge of creating something that's created specifically thanks to the technological power and entertainment quality that matches the current gen, while treating the captivating elements of the original game with respect. For those who've played it, but new but familiar, quote unquote, and for those who haven't played it, experience the charm of 7, which moved the hearts of many, now created with the most exciting modern technology available. I hope you enjoy it. So he's pretty much saying, we're doing something, we want to do something for people that played the game, because we all played the game, the old game. This directly ties back to their recent change of the battle system, allowing the battle system to quite literally play just like the old game if you want it to. And them also being like, this is obviously going to be a game that people are just going to want to jump in and play. Like, clearly, if someone's looking at FF7 Remake and you're even briefly interested in RPGs, like much less JRPGs at all, it's going to be pretty obvious if you didn't have a chance to play the old game. It's going to be a good opportunity to jump in. The game just looks too good. Like, everything about it. It plays good. It looks good. It looks like it's got interesting characters and narrative. Like, 7 has that charm. So, yeah, that's all very good information. Once again, another very, not as ballsy, but very self-reflective sort of thing that they're going for here, which is good. You know? This all makes me very happy. And what, like I said too, is reflective of what the devs were literally talking to me about when I was at E3 and what I saw. Another co-director and scenario design, wow. For the original game, I joined the project as a planner who was just starting out in my career, and I worked on Sector 7 slums and Wall Market. In producing Remake, the thoughts and feelings I had when I was just starting out back then were revived, and at the same time, I took on the challenge of new methods of expression that I'm able to execute now that I have the experience. The original version was a forerunner when it came to RPGs that used 3D CG. But the characters were made of polygons, the dialogue was in text only, and the cameras weren't able to be used for cutscenes. In Remake, we're using the newest visuals, voice acting, character facial expressions to redesign 7 Universe to be more realistic. By increasing the realism of the universe within the city of Midgar, which is made prosperous by Mako energy, we of course also reimagined the characters who reside there. Cloud, Tifa, vividly as living and breathing human beings, depicting their daily lives and feelings in a more in-depth manner. We took care not only the main characters, but also characters like Johnny, Shinra Middle Manager, who I created back then. But please keep your eye out for see how they make their new appearances. Additionally, when remaking the Honeybee Inn at the Wall Market, we revived it as a pantheon of entertainment, which couldn't be realized back then. Here, the scene that many of you have been eager to see where Cloud disguises himself. Please enjoy. Wow! So they're directly saying, there you go. They have directly confirmed the cross-dressing scene is in. Wow. They directly confirmed that you'll be able to go to the Honeybee Inn and all of its weird debauchery. Of course they were gonna do it. People thought they weren't gonna do it? Really? You thought they weren't gonna put in the cross-dressing scene? Really? There's an interesting balance here, and he's like hyper realistic. We want to make Cloud, Tifa, Barrett. We want to make Sephiroth. All these characters feel and look as much like real people as we possibly can. And they're doing a good job, obviously, but I think the big thing is the fantastical elements in FF7 Remake. FF7 Remake isn't all hyper-realistic. Like, a lot of the environments are very fantastical. And the one thing that they did not go hyper-realistic on, which is, I think, probably the most important, they did not choose to tone down or hyper-revisualize any of the enemy monsters in the game. All the monsters in the game look even more crazy or even more fantastical than they did in FF7 Original. So they chose to, we're going to take the realistic looking stuff and make it go crazy realistic. But we're going to take the stuff that is obviously based on complete fantasy, but we're just going to go boom and we're just going to slam it out of the park. So that's, I think, is one of the best things they could have possibly done, because I want to see what the hell Hell House looks like. Based on what they've shown us so far, do you think that Hell House couldn't show up in FF7 Remake? Hell no! At the beginning, when you first saw the first trailer, did it seem like Hell House might not be able to show up in FF7 Remake? Oh yeah, it was like, I don't know. You had no idea because you had not seen enough. You just saw Shinra soldiers and a couple of like weird like creatures and stuff like that. But any of the funky like ghosts that are in Ghost Town and any of that weird shit you had, it was like, the game just doesn't seem like it either way. That was a long time ago. That was back 4 years ago when the first trailers were shown off. But now with the current trailers, there isn't a doubt in my mind that any of that shit can't show up here. No doubt in my mind. Not at all. In fact, it's one of my favorite things that was in FF15 was their combination of very hyper real and then very hyper fantasy. And it was almost like that was a big part of that game's charm as well, for the part of the game that I thought was really good, was the fact that you had dudes driving around in a car. We ran out of gas, but then they summoned literally God to kill some goats. It was weird. It was weird and like not super balanced in ways, because obviously the characters in FF15 are in a world that is way more realistic and less fantasy driven than the world of FF7. Because once again, what's the most realistic thing in FF7 Remake? The characters, the actual characters. So, graphics and VFX director, Shintaro Takai. I created the effects for the original FF7. Back then, the scope of development was so exorbitantly massive, I just threw myself into the tasks for which I was responsible, without even fully understanding what sort of game we were creating. Near the final stages of dev, when I finally tried playing the test version, I remember being surprised by the graphics and the depth of the story, as well as how fully realized it was, and I remember enjoying the game as a player. It's been 22 years and I'm participating in FF7 Remake as a developer, and today I'm able to experience the impact and fun similar to that of the previous title. For the remake, I've mainly directed the effects section, while also crossing over into other sections for decisions and directions of overall graphics. Among the many major games that are celebrated for their photorealistic graphics, 7 is a little different. Not only is it realistic, but I believe you'll notice that it incorporates playfulness in its design. Oh Jesus, I just talked about this. The design and colors for the original not found in the other games. Effects are an area that is particularly conducive to expressing various elements of playfulness. I hope you'll enjoy the various effects that are not only beautiful, but also convincingly portray realism and magic. Various elements on game design and graphic design have been packed into every corner of the vast Midgar. I hope you enjoy it. You can translate this as video game bullshit. We are not shying away from the fact that this game is going to have a bunch of super video gamey bullshit. Thank God. We're not going to have the characters forced to be Characters can't jump really high. Characters can't do this. How do you get fire? This doesn't make any sense. Nah, fuck it. It needs to have that feeling. It needs to have a feeling that the game, anything is possible in this world. Video game bullshit. Tsuruki Endo, battle director. When I played the original version, I wasn't on the game creation side of things, and I remember enjoying it as a player and feeling constant surprise at the evolution of games. The three-dimensionality of the stage and the dynamism of the battle scenes have left a strong impression on me. Back then, I never imagined that I would someday be on the side of creating games, or that I would be able to be involved. Speaking of my own personal experience, I had mostly been creating action games thus far, so this title, I took on the challenge of remaking a system that was not of an action game originally and incorporating action elements into it. Production was completely indifferent than that of a pure action game, and the need for new design philosophy often arose. Production involved constantly searching for the best balance of action and command elements, but I believe we managed to do it in an exciting new way. In order to create battles that are surprising and never boring, we worked hard to create a variety of strategic elements for each boss and enemy. Also, in constructing battle systems for each character, we want to respect the image of the original version while additionally introducing new abilities. I hope you're able to find your own style of battle by combining these abilities with materia. And that's boiling down to one of the most important things in the battle system of this game. Every character will act different. Every character has unique abilities and gimmicks that you'll have to use for that character. So that's like, honestly, possibly one of the most important things in a game is that you'll have different ways that you can play it. You have different ways that you can jump back in and then find a new way to play it with another character, find a new way to do something different with a character that you've never done before. All good news. All very good news. So Takao Miyake, environmental director. For Remake, the graphics team worked to the theme of how would Midgar look if it existed in real life. As such, the environments, we examined those portions that were once left to the players' imaginations, fell outside of the on-screen area, or were between scenes and tried to supplement them in detail, or were between scenes. For all the fans out there, we worked our hardest in hopes that you'll be able to relive an experience that also surpasses your memories. For all of you that are playing for the first time, we worked our hardest with the sole hope that you'll experience this amazing universe that has remained beloved by so many for 22 years, and to be able to convey its charm. Additionally, in order to create a fitting backdrop for the drama unfolding around the main characters, and in order for it to be a stage where various characters living in Midgar can be their vibrant selves, all of teams, including the environment section, came up with ideas and worked collaboratively. Midgar is a closed city. However, I would be very happy if by experiencing the drama unfolding around its residents and the main characters who go through it, you feel as though Midgar actually exists. I am a Final Fantasy VII fan, so being able to take part in the remake was something that made me happy, but also nervous. It's been an unforgettable development experience. I truly hope that everyone enjoys it. All good news. All the environments have looked interesting so far. In fact, we actually get to see some more environments in the screenshots today. Ichiro Yamaguchi, lighting director. Lightning director! 7 for me, at the time when I was in school, was a very impactful game. It really pierced my heart as I was such a sensitive age. With not only a rich story, but charming characters, world-setting music, not to mention that it was the first in the series to be in 3D. This was a piece that really brought out my interest in CG in general. When I was able to join the 7 Remake team, I started by thinking back of how I felt when I first played. Midgar, with its abundant mix of different elements and original characters like Cloud, became something unbreakable from the standard for me as Final Fantasy VII. In the world of the game, just like in real life, if there is not some form of light, then you won't be able to see anything. So when putting up lights just anywhere, Midgar could lose its token Midgarness, and Cloud wouldn't be Cloud anymore. I've taken as much care as possible to recreate the world that I had saved in my mind, and attempted to remake it to a fresh and modern standard. The positions of the few lights that illuminate the entirety of Midgar, the adjustments made to each and every voluminous cutscene, it's all a lot of work. However, alongside the rest of the wonderful lighting team, we feel that we brought something great to the table. We've left in elements that will have you going, ah, that's what it was like, and you'll still be able to enjoy the world of 7 in a new and fresh style. Yeah, lighting is pretty. Lighting is a huge part. Lighting and sound and music are a huge part of old FF7, in my opinion. Yeah, that's the impression you're getting. This is a Square Enix game with a fucking budget. And you know what? It's a Square Enix game with a with a history. Probably one of the most impactful, culturally impactful games of all time. So for everyone to be like, I want to be a part of that. Like, I don't know, instead of like, oh God, that could potentially be an absolute disaster that'll never make anyone happy. It seemed like a lot of people stepped up to make sure shit was going on. Yeah, it more seems like, based on who's in here and what we've seen so far, that this guy is doing his job very well, because he was responsible for development milestones, constructing workflow in Unreal, and taking responsibility for game design and the development team overall. This guy, who's also an FF7 fan, is going the fuck in on making sure that the right people are getting the right jobs. Because that's a big part of the industry, chat, is that sometimes people just have a gig and they don't give a shit. Moving on. Character modeling. I was amongst those who bought the original game on the day of its release and played it constantly, clearing it in under a week. Those that also have cleared it will understand this, but I also wasn't quite satisfied with the locations, so I continued to play it after clearing it in the same places as well. So my memory of 7 was how I actually started studying CG, after being left with a strong motivation to create a Final Fantasy game, when playing it and truly being moved by it. So I just made up my mind about, and bought a PC to help me study, something that I had never been ever touched before. So for me, someone who had been so strongly influenced by the original, to be working on the characters of the remake, I want to do everything I can to them in a way that shows the both charm and freshness while keeping the nostalgia. So I want them to reflect in a fresh way that also, players of the original to remember the time that they played the original, as well as make them detailed and charming enough to give first-time players the understanding of just how charming they are. I've ensured to arrange things like hairstyles, outfits to recreate the design of the original, so I encourage anyone to take their time with camera angles to take a look. Also, there are several characters that stand out other than just main characters that you'll find. So please see for yourself as to what kind of appearance and characteristics they have. Other than that, we got enemies in there perhaps too close to the original, and there are many surprises coming in the remake for you to look at and keep forward to, and I'll look forward to. Keep your eyes out. That's all good news. That's all very good news. This paragraph reads rough. Yeah, once again, they almost went a little too original with some characters being super fantastical. I think that's a very specific design direction. And some people might not have agreed with that, like in the development, but the directors were like, nah, this is probably the way to go for nostalgia's sake. Keep the characters and keep the monsters especially looking like the old monsters. Oh my god, they're actually trying? Yeah, that's the, if the impression from all the trailers and all the footage of the game, and much less these interviews, is giving off, is that it seems like they give a shit. Yoshiyuki Soma, animation director. So when 7 came out, I was actually more of a Sega Saturn fan. I like this guy already. So I didn't play it straight away. However, when it was decided that I was to join Square, I was put on the dev team of 8. And so I thought to myself, I'm screwed if I don't know about Final Fantasy VII. That's when I bought a PlayStation and played it so much. Those memories feel like only yesterday, so I can't say this too loudly, but I actually started it out of obligation rather than as a fan. However, I was absolutely enthralled by the world and lore as soon as I picked it up. For the animators, each and every member of the team, for those responsible for battles, fields, simple events, cutscenes, minigames, facial expressions, to swinging things in the background, actual behavior settings, have all worked to improve this one. To improve as one. We've done our best to ensure that whatever you do, it feels like characters are alive and there with you. We really hope to enjoy the story of Midgar on a huge screen, and with Cloud and his friends. Yeah, once again, already fired. Yeah, after this interview, they let him go. He was no longer with the company. Yeah, and that's it. That's all we got for this portion, and that was a lot of info. Like there was some stuff that they talked about the game that we haven't actually heard much about before at all, and much less some stuff about the next game, which I was not ready for them to talk about.